Good morning. Hi, how y'all doing? Hope everybody's doing well. So you've got a video that goes over the instructions and the expectations for the exam, and I'm not going to repeat any of that, but that's there for a reason. Particularly, you want to stay as close to the question as possible, close to the text as possible, and you want to cite as specifically as you can, right? And proofread, proofread, proofread. All right. So what I'm going to do in this video very quickly is just go over the questions and clarify exactly what I'm asking. The way these questions are structured is that I provide you the general topic of what the paper is about, each question, and then I give you nuts and bolts of things that you want to focus on as you write. So that's really the basic template that you should keep in mind in approaching answering them. Okay, great. Question 1 addresses the Odyssey, and I've given you the opening lines of the poem, right? What's called the proem, in which Homer is speaking to the muse, and we talked about the function of the muse and so on and so forth. But the focus of this question is less this conversation with the muse and more in the vein of the fact that this opening dialogue with the muse provides the central plot and the central themes of the text. And so in specifically, we talked about the way in which these opening lines and the rest of the text establish that the Odyssey, you think of it as a journey, that these opening lines establish the text as a type of a journey. And you start with a literal journey and you move to a figurative one. Or you start with a physical journey of Odysseus and his men coming from Troy, trying to make their way to Ithaca. And we discover in the process of that story being narrated that what we're really being given is a psychological journey, particularly in the development of Odysseus's character, or you could say his maturity as a human being. Right? So I'll just read here. The opening lines of the Odyssey are a microcosm of the plot and central themes. In particular, they characterize a certain kind of journey. Make sure to discuss the literal or physical aspect of this journey and the figurative or psychological aspect or meaning of this journey. All right, so the key thing in answering this question is that, number one, there are two types of journeys here. And it all starts from the analysis of the actual physical journey. And we all know what a journey is. You go from point A to point B. You have a destination in mind. And so the figurative journey or the psychological journey or the metaphorical journey, these are all synonyms for the same thing here, are really parallels that are derivative of this actual physical journey. So if you don't have the physical journey clear in your mind, it becomes more complicated to understand the metaphorical nature of this journey or the psychological nature of it. So what I'd like you to do is to first establish the key components of this physical journey and then to interpret each of those components relative to their symbolic meaning, relative to their psychological meaning. And I'll clarify that just in a second. So here it says, make sure, so this is the basic topic, talk about the literal and figurative journey. And then here I'm just providing you, make sure you talk about these things and consider them in this way. So first of all, establish the central components of the literal aspect of the journey. Question, what are they? A journey has a starting point. It has a destination or goal. It has a means, which is to say a way of getting there, mode of transportation. It has a certain path or course. It has progress and advance, and it also has setbacks. So make sure to articulate these things. So the key thing that I want to make clear here is that when we're talking about the literal journey, I don't specifically mean including every aspect of the course of his trip. What I'm focusing on here is just the central components of it, not including, for example, every single destination and what happens on every one, right? So let's be clear. I'll give away some of the answer here, right? It's Odysseus and his men on a boat out on the ocean, right? And I'll refer to it in just a moment, but we looked at a passage from Alexander Pope's Essay on Man. Alexander Pope's Essay on Man. And it's posted on Blackboard in the PowerPoint dealing with the opening lines of the poem, right? Dealing with human nature. And so the key thing here is that Pope relies on a metaphor of a ship on an ocean that is very common in Greek literature, and it's very clearly being employed in this text, such that the boat represents something, the ocean or sea represents something, the destination represents something, and this particular type of journey that is taken represents something, and all those aspects of the physical situation of being on that boat and out on the ocean, and their specific characteristics. We talk about the metaphorical meaning of the journey, right? Remember what a metaphor is. A metaphor is the transference of the attributes of one thing onto another. So here we've got the attributes of the physical journey being transferred on to something more psychological, right? It's a kind of coded way of speaking about something psychological, which means you have to identify the physical attributes that are then being transferred in parallel or translated into a psychological meaning. So this is really what I'm talking about here. So let's be clear, give a little insight. The boat is not just a boat. The ocean or the sea is not just a sea. And the destination is not just Ithaca, because Ithaca is not just a geographical location. It's also, you could say, a psychological location, right? I'll give you something like home, right? And also, if we look to some elements here, right? Sing to me of the man of twists and turns, the man of twists and turns. Now, we all know on the most basic level that it's the journey is the thing with the twists and turns. But here, Homer makes a point of saying the man of twists and turns. And what it suggests is that the twists and turns of the journey are really just a product of the twists and turns of the nature or the psychology of this man, right? And so this line, this little phrase alone, the man of twists and turns, immediately lets us know that this is actually a psychological journey. And you can consider things like curbing one's desire. The destination could be Ithaca. The destination could also be the goal of curbing one's desire in order to succeed, in order to be able to get to the physical location of home. So one last little thing here. Since the psychological journey is really a lot about human nature, and then more specifically Odysseus's nature, and when we think about the substantive part of human nature, we think about human psychology, right? One of the very important phrases is this phrase, the man of twists and turns, which in Greek translates as andra polytropos. Andra polytropos. And polytropos is the word for twists and turns here, and it means like many-sided, or many-turned, or many turns, plural, or multifaceted, diverse, complex, complicated. He's a man of all these attributes, and all these different facets of the meaning of that word are applicable. Andra means not just human being, but it means a certain type of man. And the specific details of that are provided in the study guide, the videos, the PowerPoint, etc., etc. So just to make this crystal clear, this is the passage from Pope's Essay on Man, in which he establishes an allegory of a ship on the sea. And allegory is a special type of metaphor, really. And I'm not going to read this, but what it starts to discuss is literally a ship out on the sea, and very quickly within the space of the first sentence, you realize very clearly that this ship is not a physical ship, right? This is a metaphor for human psychology, right? And all the elements that affect the ship and the aspects of the ocean, they're all relevant in capturing the psychological meaning here. And I shall leave it at that. Okay, so question number 2 obviously comes from Othello, and it focuses on Iago in the various dimensions of his character. And really 3 things I'm asking for very simply is, number 1, to explain the full nature of Iago's plot. What does it consist of? I'll come back to that. What kind of person Iago is, right? So we get a psychological portrait of a man, and of course he's not the only one who's given an in-depth portrait, same as Othello. But we've talked about the different parts of the soul. We've talked about the conflict between reason and passion, something Iago explicitly refers to in his own speeches. And we've talked about the Greek conception of the soul consisting of 3 parts. That here's the important thing, that these 3 parts are not like physical structures in the brain or the body. They are 3 motivational sources, and they are distinguished by their distinct objects of desire different things. And these basic elements of the soul and their motivations and the objects of desire really become a kind of lens through which you can understand human behavior. So we established in Act 1 of Othello that Iago makes some clear claims as to his motivation, and some of this touches on Part C. In terms of what kind of person he is, we're revealed who he is in part by the way he reacts, for example, to his failure to gain the promotion, right? And particularly here, I give a little passage dealing with this way he's going to present himself, this distinguish between appearance and reality, his duplicity, so on and so forth. So, pardon me, let me step back. So, Iago's full plot, I want you to talk about the means and the ends. And what I simply mean there, the ends are the goals. What are, and notice that's plural. There's obviously one main goal, but there's more than just one singular goal. And then there's the means, and that's the way he does it. That's, you could say, the method by which he achieves his ends. And that involves his engagements with the other characters and doing various things. So here he talks about his peculiar end. I mean, this is an interesting word. And what is the word peculiar? We have a general meaning, understanding. He uses this word peculiar end. And there are many events in the womb of time. And these events are obviously connected to his plot. And he knows what they are. And they're going to be revealed in the womb of time because he knows what they are and we don't. And they will be delivered. And he used this metaphor of birth on more than one occasion. And so he speaks of his plot as a monstrous birth that's going to be brought to the world's light. And of course, this is, you could say, a child of his own mind, right, or his own intellect, that starts out as an idea and becomes manifest in the real world by his actions, his deeds and speeches, and so on. So then the last one, what are his motivations, right? What is he motivated by? What do you think makes him tick? So obviously this is a question that overlaps with what kind of person he is. And it even overlaps with what his plot is, because to talk about his motivations is maybe to discuss his plot. So I'm aware that these 3 questions are all interrelated. You just, as answering, you want to try to distinguish as much as possible and keep discussion as focused to that issue. And, you know, if you have some topic that might apply to both of them, just make a decision about which one you think might better suit it. So in terms of talking about motivation, we talk about the 3 parts of the soul: reason, spirit, and appetite. And then here I've given you some notations, act, scene, and lines, where he explicitly talks about his motive. And of course, the problem here is that he doesn't give one motive, he gives multiple motives. And it starts to raise the question of what is the real motive. And it creates a mystery because some of the motives are rather different. And then, of course, famously, at the end of the play, so part 3 here, I should say lowercase Roman numeral 3, Othello asks him, "Why did you do this to me?" And Iago's response is, "Demand me nothing." What is he asking? He wants to know the motive, right? He says, "Demand me nothing. You know what you know," right? So, I mean, Iago could have simply stated his motive here if he wanted to, but for some reason he doesn't. For some reason he doesn't want it known what his motive is. For some reason he wants to leave it for others to speculate. And I think it's not just Othello who's speculating, but that's us, the spectator, the audience. So this statement just clarifies that his motives are less clear than they might first seem, right? And that they're left to us to really discern, right? So with that, I think we've reached the end of the video. Thank you very much, and good luck, everybody.